Hello to Pocket Console Chats. We've got a special edition today where we have some guests that we're bringing in that are actually some game developers. You know, it's fantastic to hear from people other than just game lovers every now and then. So, turning it to the other side of the table. As always, this is a completely unedited, semi-unscripted chat that we'll be having. And we're just going to talk about all things related to handheld video games. But we've got a little bit of a different slant on it today because we do have two guests from Yacht Club Games. Kickstarter success, Shovel Knight, released on 3DS along with PC and Wii U. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce our guests. Let me pass it off first. Sorry, I'm forgetting the best part. I'm Michael Cunningham. Just wanted to welcome you all to this. But we've got more important people to talk to. You know who I am. You may not know who these guys are. You may have read some of their stuff. You may have played their games. Hopefully you've played their game. If not, let me pass it off first to Mr. David D'Angelo.
Hey, I'm David. In case you don't know, we're the developers of Yacht Club. We're developers at Yacht Club Games. We made Shovel Knight for 3DS and Wii U and PC, and it just came out. And you should try it out if you haven't.
You can do it.
I'll pass it over to my friend Nick here.
So yeah, I'm Nick Wozniak. Most people call me Woz, actually. So you can feel free to. And I do the pixel art for the game. So we're a pretty small team, so we're able to take on major roles in the company as a whole. So I was able to do most of the pixel art for the whole game, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, play Shovel Knight.
Excellent. Thank you guys for joining us today. It's fantastic to get to talk with you. And no offense to you, David. I'm not going to, this isn't a slam against you, but if you've done the pixel art for the game, you have some applause for me right here. Love the style. Absolutely love the style. Black Knight's like one of my favorite pixel art style characters in forever. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do the pixel art, but a lot of the design work was done by Erin. She's not here, but she does all the concept art, and she does the initial concepts for the bosses and the enemies and stuff. And she did that for Shovel Knight, and she also did that she also did the high resolution art, all the promotional art for us. So I can't take all the credit, and I wouldn't want to because it's a really great team of artists.
I can. It was all me.
It was all David and all Sean. We'll tell Erin later that you kind of mentioned her in passing and said she might have had something to do with this, but you weren't quite sure. But no, hands up to both of you guys, and to Erin as well, and the rest of the team. And Kickstarter has seemed to have been a questionable thing as of late because it seems like left and right you get all kinds of questionable developers putting anything up that they want to they've got an idea for a game and they think, hey, let's go to Kickstarter and just post some concept art. But, round of applause for pulling through and putting out a fantastic game and, fulfilling exactly what you set out to put in. So thank you all for that. It's been fantastic. So.
Well, you're welcome.
So kind of in talking about that, I was curious, and you may have mentioned this in other places, but just wanted to kind of touch on it here since we've got you live. What kind of feedback have you had as far as Kickstarter? I know we were reading through something that you posted, David, just recently about the sales of the game and how everything's gone from there. How big of an impact really was Kickstarter on getting the game? We're kind of taking an angle of the handheld market, so getting it onto 3DS, is that something you think you could have done without Kickstarter?
It depends what, I don't know, it depends. It would have been, we could have probably done it, yes, but it would have been a very different pathway. We were in discussion with Nintendo since before the Kickstarter to get on the 3DS. And we got approval to be on the 3DS maybe like the third or fourth day in our Kickstarter. So, but they didn't give us approval based on the fact that we were doing a Kickstarter. They gave us approval based on the fact that we had made games on the 3DS and on the DS in the past. So that was really the pathway which we were able to put a game out on there. But in terms, would this game have gotten made if we didn't do that Kickstarter? I don't know. could we have found a publisher to, put up the money? Could we have, found a venture capitalist that was willing to like give us his all? Who knows? So, I mean, the game might have not existed without Kickstarter, but like the getting it on the 3DS was already in place before that.
Excellent. I knew that was something that was really early on, and one of the first updates that you had was mentioning that it was coming to 3DS. And that seems to be one of the things we see with a lot of Kickstarters, and especially from some of the more untested developers or new teams that haven't really ever done anything before, is they want to promise the moon. They want to say, well, we're coming to Wii U, 3DS, Vita, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, toasters, anything that they want to put up there.
Toaster games are the best, by the way.
I know. My toaster only has 2 settings, though, so it's kind of sad to play. There's not a whole lot of options that you get on there. We're here in Tennessee, so we barely have electricity, so. But yeah, I was just kind of curious how that deal came about so quickly. So it's good to know, things were kind of in place ahead of time. You were at least working on that. The general public a lot of times just assumes, I think, that if you want to put a game on a console, that you can just say, hey, we want to do that, and it just happens. They don't a lot of times realize all the work that has to go into it even before the Kickstarter goes into play. So
yeah,
you said
absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm sure there are those Kickstarters out there that have said, hey, we're just going to put it on there. And then tries to get Nintendo on board after the fact. I guess we were a little too weary to do that.
Now, you mentioned you had released some other games on other systems. What's kind of the pedigree of some of your backgrounds? I know Yacht Club Games is relatively new in a lot of people's minds. So,
Right.
What kind of background do you have as far as releasing on handhelds prior to this?
We've done a bunch of games actually, and we all came from a previous company to this called Way Forward, and there we worked on a bunch of licensed titles and a few independent ones. Actually, David and I worked together on a few games like Thor for the DS. That was a pretty good one. We also worked on like a Taz game. Most
There's
recently,
nothing wrong with paying the bills. Nothing wrong with classic.
Exactly.
Batman Brave and the Bold for the DS.
Oh, that's true,
we did. I had a little piece in Aliens Infestation for the DS.
Now that was a fun little game. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, we did.
One of the few Alien games that was actually worth playing.
Worked on Mighty Milky Way, which is a little dumb little title.
I did too. My credit in Mighty Milky Way is T-Rex Wrangler because I animated the T-Rex.
We have guys at the team that worked on Mighty Switch Force too. Yeah, we've made all. Sean assistant directed Contra 4.
Yeah,
We've made a lot of games. It's hard to keep track of them.
It is
a lot of experience in the handheld market.
Right.
So it's nothing new that you were coming into in this case, which is a good thing. And I think a lot of people do overlook that. They just assume that it's a Kickstarter in some aspects, and these guys must have never made anything before. If it's a big name they've never heard of, and may not associate you all with Way Forward, who's made some fantastic games that I've really enjoyed myself. So definitely appreciate kind of the background on that.
Yeah. It's a little scary for me to see other Kickstarters trying who haven't done anything before, because when you, like you were saying before, how they promise the world and they promise this, and this, and this. Well, sometimes they promise something that doesn't sound like the world, but it is if you have never made a game before. And so, like a lot of things, like you'll see online multiplayer just thrown out there as like another feature. But every time I see that, I cringe because I know like that's a huge feature and that's something that like we're not even willing to handle. And we've done a bunch of games, so there's a lot of just like when we've made a bunch of games, we understand a little bit about what can blow out of scope and what can make a game like not come out, basically. And so it's a little weird because like Kickstarter is allowing anybody to just kind of come in. It's a great opportunity, but it's also like it's bringing in people that don't have a lot of experience, and so. Kickstarter's in a weird spot where it's kind of a mixed waters, where it's like big companies or people have done a lot of stuff in the past mixed with people who are just kind of trying it out for the first time. And so at this point, the game scene on Kickstarter is a little bit strange.
it's always worrisome, and I've kind of gotten Kickstarter shy over the last little bit just because there's very few games or projects that I've backed back when it first started getting hot that have kind of even been released. So that's why I said congratulations to you all for at least releasing your game. So that's one step ahead of a lot of the others that I've backed. So I did want to ask too. The initial pitch was for PC, and the console versions kind of came later, despite the fact you said they were in development. What were some of the concerns that you had as far as development of a handheld version of Shovel Knight compared to the higher scope PC and Wii U versions?
Well,
I would actually say that the portable one was the highest scope.
Yeah.
Which might be shocking to you, just because we're talking about really old technology. You might not think of it that way, but the reason Nintendo keeps their consoles so cheap is because they're using old technology in their consoles. And then we're talking about an old piece of hardware that can output to essentially 3 screens, because that's what the 3D stereo is. It's actually 2 screens, right? It's displaying one in each eye. So it's most consoles only display to 1 screen, but now you're having an old piece of hardware trying to do its best to display on 3 screens at once. That's like a lot of work for one little tiny machine.
David's speaking from the most experience on this because
so like when your
whole task was to wrangle it onto the 3DS.
Yeah, so getting that thing to run 60 frames a second is quite a challenge, right? And then on top of that, you need to add stereoscopic to all of the game, right? Each single enemy and object in the game has to be able to work in 3D and look good, right? And all the backgrounds. So like we're going blind while developing Shovel Knight, trying to make that thing look pretty, because when it doesn't work, you're seeing black in one eye and like some weird image in the other eye, and it's really crazy. So I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into making that like portable experience nice. And on top of that, we wanted to make it feel like really home on the 3DS, so we added things like Street Pass and Play Coin support and touchscreen support, like goofy, weird things that makes you feel like, oh yeah, like this feels like a 3DS game.
Well, I guess the main reason in an outsider's eye, I kind of thought of that as a smaller scale or something along those lines, is because it seems like a lot of times when it comes to development, the handheld market's not necessarily the top priority, or you don't really understand exactly what all goes into it, or maybe exactly what you said, it takes a whole lot more to go into it than you would imagine. So maybe that's why a lot more developers just say, hey, passing on that, especially on the 3DS, when like you said, you've got 3 screens to deal with instead of 2, or instead of 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the technology behind there is really, the reason why Unreal and Unity and all of these different engines, which most people make their games on, don't support the 3DS, is because it's really a difficult challenge to get a game running on there. So it is quite a bit of overhead to get on there in the first place, and just because if I make a game that's all fancy graphics, right? I don't want it to look. I don't want in order to get it to run on the 3DS, you have to lower that quality bar, right? And a lot of studios don't want to do that. They want to have that. They want it to be the best experience on whatever they put it on.
Right.
So it's like that in terms of scope, it becomes a much larger project to put it on that system. But like if you're starting from the ground up for the 3DS, yeah, like then the size of the games that can even be on the 3DS are much smaller, right? Like it can only hold so much in memory, so like the game only can be so long. It can't be a Skyrim on the 3DS, right?
Well, yeah, and one thing that does though is it creates a bunch of games that are like mostly custom made for the 3DS, and so you're going to see you don't see a lot of just ported over games like you would with the PS3 and Xbox. There's not really a lot of difference between the two, but with a 3DS game, they're usually unique experiences. So it's sort of like it's a mixed bag for developers. It's a little bit harder because they're specifically making a game for the 3DS, but for a consumer, they're enjoying a game that was made probably just for that system.
Understood. Now, Were there other concerns? I know you mentioned being able to do Street Pass on there, and initially the battle mode's one thing that wasn't able to be on there. What were some of the other challenges you knew you were going to be facing other than the visual side going on to 3DS and the memory, as far as features and everything that you wanted to put into Shovel Knight?
Well, there's some weird stuff. I mean, the DS itself was made for pixel games, but the 3DS was made for 3D games, and so David actually had to do a lot of stuff to make the game like mimic pixel art, if that makes any sense. So, like, one example, the one that we always bring up is the damage flash. So when you hit an enemy that has more than just one health, he flashes this red and blue color or whatever that you see, and that is very easy to do on the NES, but I think David could speak to how difficult it was.
Yeah, so basically, like, what we're talking about is palettes, right? A palette is basically you have, like, 32 colors which represent a sprite, right? And the reason those, like, NES games and SNES games look like how they did is because they said, like, oh, this sprite can have 4 colors out of this palette, right? And when you, like, hit a guy in Shovel Knight, he, like, flips through those colors really quickly, so it looks like he's getting hit. And another benefit of having those palettes set up is that you can, like, switch the colors out for a sprite really easily. So, like, when Shovel Knight puts on a new armor, now he's red, and he looks really cool. That's, like, due to the fact that you're, like, using these base colors, and that technology is, like, based off 80s technology because they couldn't display millions of colors on the screen, right? So what they did instead is they said, oh, we'll only use these 32 colors, and that's, like, how they set up. In each sprite will only use, like, 4 colors. And then when they came to, like, nowadays, they decided to abandon that technology, but we can still imitate it because we have, like, so much technology, right, that it's, like, easy to imitate. But when you get to the 3DS, it's, like, some weird in-between where they had abandoned it, but they still don't really have support for, like, having it. So we had to, like, find some tricky ways to, like, implement it so we could still have it. And then I would say another big, like, 3DS thing was we didn't know how to deal with that second screen for a long time. Yeah. It's like we wanted to come up with a creative way to, like, what should we have on the bottom of the screen? We don't want it to be a map. Like, everyone puts a map on the bottom of the screen. It's so lame, right? And, like, I mean, we really didn't want to actually put the relics, which is what we have there now. Like, the quick instant switch relics, we were like, that's sort of lame, like, we shouldn't do that. And that's what we ended up with because we couldn't think of anything more creative.
Well, functionality is never a bad thing, so.
Yeah, I think, like, when we started playing the game, it's like we really wanted a hot swap for relics, and it's like that. It just made sense to have it there.
See, that's interesting to see, too. And, a couple other things that you'd mentioned. How have you dealt with Street Pass? How did the idea for what you were going to do with that come about?
You can read about this. We posted a huge blog post on our website if you want to read about it in depth. But basically, we were, like, debating Street Pass ideas for a long time, and like, we couldn't settle on something that. The problem is with Street Pass, right? Is that in our minds, at least, is that most games felt like they were like tokens. Like, you basically cross someone in the street, and that gives you a token to play the game more. And that felt really lame to us. Like, we wanted it to feel like a special experience, not like just because I go out on the street I can play my game some more, right? Which is, like, it's cool in some aspects, like with, the Nintendo Street Pass Plaza games, like, you're playing a bunch of games at once or whatever, or, like, there's cool little ways they, like, tweak it where it's like, oh, they have, like, some kind of hat I don't have or something like that. But, like, we wanted it to feel like a special, unique thing. And the only ideas we could think of basically meant, like, building a whole game that would take a year.
Yeah. The scope is really big when you're thinking about just, like, what could possibly happen.
Or they were, like, things that would get complicated with, like, how our game mechanics already worked. Like, one of the ideas was pitched was, oh, maybe you should be able to hide treasure in the level. So, like, I'm playing the game and I'm David, right? And I go and hide. I go into King Knight's stage and I say, "Ooh, I'm gonna put this treasure here." And, like, when my friend passes it, he's gonna get a little notification. Like, Nick will play and get a little notification that's like, "There's treasure here. Can you find it?" And then he's like hunting every like pixel to find this money or whatever, right? And we like thought something like that would be really cool, like a treasure map hunting kind of game. But the problem was like we didn't want you to be going back to levels, right? We really wanted you to keep progressing through the game. And if like you saw that like, oh, Nick hit something in King Knight stage, you would probably want to go back to King Knight stage, which would like, be like totally against the flow of our game. So that was like the kind of the things we were like fighting against when implementing like a Street Pass feature. And so what we ended up settling on basically was this. I had already developed this tech for recording the input for like debugging reasons. So like when you like press on the controller, it would record like I pressed right, I pressed left, and it could do that. It could play it back, right? So you could play through the entire stage, and then we would record it and play that entire stage back, and that way we could find bugs easier and that kind of thing. So I said, hey, why don't we take that and use it for Street Pass? Would we record a little small tiny section of like a player playing a stage, and we'd play it against the other person's little tiny recording of someone's playing a stage, and they would fight each other, and it would be really dumb and stupid. But it would be like a really weird implementation of Street Pass, which would be interesting and hopefully something like people would like, and like, you know, it would make the 3DS version more appealing.
So that's good to know. I know that I have a hard time here in Tennessee and kind of the sticks, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. Don't get a whole lot of street passes out in this area, unfortunately. So
yeah, I don't get any either. Like when I've gotten like 30 street passes, and they were all at a convention.
Yeah, whenever I've gone to, you know, press events or something along those lines, that tends to be where I get all the street passes, never from around here. I think it was frightening because I was at work, street passed apparently somebody in the bathroom, and I just had, I didn't stay around to find out who it was. I was like, this could be a new gamer. I don't really want to know, but you know, more power to you for street passing me here. So
you should go to a convention. They're really, really effective. I think when we went to Comic-Con very recently, Sean got like 110 just Shovel Knight street passes, and on top of all the other ones that he was getting. So like, there's a ton of street passes. I recommend that to anybody who's finding their street pass logs not filling up.
Yeah, see, that's the other problem here is, I guess, PAX East would be the closest, and even that's still over 8 hours, and they seem to put them everywhere that's not close to me, but that's all right. I'm just going to keep walking around, and eventually I'm going to get more and more street passes just, you know, walking through local shopping centers. It'll probably be kids playing Pokemon, but still. So as far as other features, is there anything else that you wanted to add to the 3DS version of Shovel Knight that you weren't able to for whatever reason?
You know, I don't know. I mean, we had things in general that we, like levels that got cut, or, you know, like there were just like little silly things we wanted to add, but nothing like really major. But that's for all the platforms. I don't know if there's anything 3DS specific that we missed out on.
I guess the only thing that I could think of is like when we eventually do the battle mode, it's sad that we can't do the online multiplayer. So that's what everybody asked for the 3DS. But nothing like specifically. I guess maybe if we could have thought of a better idea than the hot swapping, then maybe like on the bottom screen. But yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how many people really use online play on the 3DS for things other than, you know, like Mario Kart or, you know, asynchronous stuff along those lines too. So, you know, as a handheld gamer, I've played very few online matches on the 3DS or anything like that. So I don't think it's going to be as big of a miss. So, while still it would have been nice to have.
Yeah, it's just like it just feels sad for the people that bought the game miss out on that feature, you know.
Yeah.
Even if it's 10 people that would want it, we still do that for those 10 people.
Understood. Now, kind of changing gears just a little bit. I know that a lot of the accolades that you've gotten have said this feels like a very Nintendo game. Has there been any? I know that you all have mentioned kind of in passing um, PlayStation Vita version. Um, Anything that would have to take place for the stars to align for that to happen, or is it just a matter of time, money, resources at this point?
At,
Or
at, at this point, it's just
can't
an
call it.
allocation of the resources. We have there's again, we're a really small team. There's about half a dozen of us, so we're all working as hard as we can to make the game and getting all the things done. But only a couple of us are programmers. Like I can't contribute at all to the efforts of getting it on different platforms or even getting it to. Um, I can contribute very little to getting it localized and getting it get it translated for Europe and stuff. So right now we're focusing basically just still on release. Like the game is still not out on Nintendo platforms in Europe or in Australia or in Japan, and we want to get it the worldwide release. And we're also David's working on the Mac and Linux version right now, and those are all the promised launch platforms. And so we're still doing release, and then from there, after that, we're going to be doing all these stretch goal content that we promised during the Kickstarter. And so it's free updates that are going to be coming as major content updates to to anybody who bought the game. But on top of that, we also we definitely want to put it on other platforms, and we don't have anything to announce, but we have all the intention in the world to get it done. And I think our promise is
and we want to do it. We want to do it right. We don't want to it might take us a while because we want to make sure if we put it on the Vita, we want it to feel like it's a great Vita game.
Right.
We want it to have cross buy, cross save, back touch,
Back touch.
all the,
You can pass on the back touch. You don't have to use the back touch.
No, we have to use the back touch. We have to make it feel creepy and weird, and we just want to make it feel like it's a really great, of course I'd buy it on the Vita. It's the best on the Vita, right?
Yeah.
We want it to feel like it's a Sony game. We want it to feel like it feels at home there, as much as it feels at home on any other platform.
The best is when somebody has the game on their platform and then they find out that it's also on Wii U or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's weird. I thought it was just a Vita game. That's a good compliment, because that means that they internalized it and made it and it felt at home when they were just playing it on their whatever console they had.
Right. So I guess a lot of the stuff coming out of Japan, you would have to add some kind of mode where you have to massage Shield Knight in some kind of weird flashback.
Definitely. Give that armor a nice rub from the back.
Yeah, polish your shield. Just some weird stuff. As far as developing for handheld specifically, though, you kind of mentioned some of the challenges that you ran into with the 3DS. Are there any other challenges that you run into as far as designing a game that's kind of built around portability?
I think actually NES games are built around portability, which might be a weird thing to say, but they're short, right?
Yeah.
They usually have very short stages. They usually have very small mechanics, so it's really easy to jump into them, right?
And they have stages to begin with. It's not just a big long thing. It's one.
Right. They have what was I gonna say? Forgot what I was gonna say.
But yeah, they're easy to jump into, like you were saying. They're it's an experience that you can turn on, play, and then turn off, or pause and then not think about for.
Yeah, they're very bite-sized experiences in general, and that lends itself really well to portable experiences.
A lot of times I feel like I'm alone in my love for big, meaty content on portables. I know that it's the whole reason I run this site, and the whole reason I have a big, strong focus on 3DS and Vita is because I love having the big, meaty content that you can find, and something like Shovel Knight has provided that, because it's not just as a handheld game. It's not just a handheld game.
Right.
But for you all, you've been involved in developing handheld games in the past, do you think with the newer technology, just recently I played through Borderlands 2 on Vita. Never in my right mind did I ever expect anything that content complete to come out on, a handheld that I could carry around. And that's a big, huge open world game, and there were, bugs because of that, I would imagine. But it's still, even despite, there were some crashing, I guess the frame rate was not optimal compared to
Right.
the console versions. But still, in my mind, it was completely playable because it allowed me to pick up and play anywhere I wanted, whenever I wanted. Um, is that something that you see changing with the newer hardware? I know it seems a lot of times the 3DS and Vita are kind of taking the back seat to mobile and iPad and Android releases. But do you think there's possibilities for more meatier content now that it's not necessarily the GBA or DS era?
I think so, yeah. But I think that what really appeals to me when I'm playing a handheld device is that the controls feel great, and so that's why playing games on an iPhone or an iPad are really kind of they're definitely second tier, um, and that I can do it in a way that sort of like David was saying, the bite-sized chunks, like that's me playing the game for 2 minutes at a time and then like putting it away to do something else, or like I'm taking the 3DS with me while I go to to work or whatever. Like if I'm taking a bus ever anywhere, I can play the game for a few minutes. And so I think a good example that I can think of that is one of my favorite games that was a huge content game but delivered it in 3-minute chunks or 30-second chunks was Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. And if you play that game, it divides the missions up into like very small bite-sized missions, but there's a ton of them, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a limited story, but you can like it emphasizes replayability and getting a better rank, and like there's just a constant flow of stuff that you're doing. And
Yeah, it's sort of like an intelligence systems game is always like really
right,
small missions, like Fire Emblem. It's like really small battles, or like battles that you can just quit out of any time, right? But there's a billion of them. It
yeah,
goes on
exactly,
forever. It's like
yeah,
40 hours of like these really bite-sized content. I think that works really well on handheld. Uh, like in terms of what you're saying though, I think definitely we're gonna get meteor content from handheld games, and I think that's like the only path they can go right now to like survive. I mean, if you think of where handheld games started, like Game Boy, what was the biggest Game Boy game? Tetris, right? Like that is not a meaty game. I mean, it's a meaty game in terms of like you can play it forever for the rest of your life,
but that's not
right?
me.
But not in
Like,
terms of like content, right?
Yeah,
right,
doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, I mean, Tetris is more like what you would see on an iPhone or in an Android system. It's really this like small, quick experience which you can like pop in and pop out of any time. And I think like the way that the 3DS and the Vita and whatever comes next are going to survive is like the only way they can survive is like making some in between of consoles and the phone experience, and I think is where they're sort of headed already. Like Vita is like really trying, like Sony really push that thing as this is a like triple A game on your portable device, right? And like they sort
Yep.
of they haven't really hit that mark, but like they tried with like Borderlands and like Uncharted and whatever else they could get on there, and and 3DS I would say is like they're making much meatier games than they made in the past, like like Super Mario 3D Land is like a way bigger and much grander experience than Super Mario Land.
yeah,
Like
sure.
I mean, to compare those games, it's like, are you kidding me? They're not even close to the same thing.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
Like you
I think
said,
they're definitely headed that direction.
yeah, and especially with a lot of the content nowadays going, like you said, cross-buy, cross-play, there's a lot of the independent development that's coming out that's maybe not considered AAA budget-wise, or as far as graphics go, you still have great content, you still have a lot of content, but it's going to be playable across, like PlayStation 4 and Vita. So they've got to have something in place where you can kind of scale between those, and it's still
Actually,
impressive
yeah,
to be able to see that content.
absolutely. Like the disparity between the technology for the console and the portable is going to be significantly smaller than it's ever been in the
yeah.
future.
the disparity is likely to come in terms of like the design of the game itself. So like you're going to see a lot of games that work great on the Vita because they are bite-sized chunks, like they're like Spelunky or Lufttrousers, like that's just a small thing that you're doing. But like and then you go to your PS4 or 5 or whatever in the future, and you're playing like your Metal Gear Solids, like that are like super long or whatever. And so yeah, I think it's becoming less about the technology and more about like the style of gaming, and that's why you're seeing like they're pushing that like on like that feeling of the game as opposed to like the look of it. It's like it's your game on the go. It's your game for anytime, or as opposed to like this is the game compromise equivalent of what you're you're hoping to play at home.
Right. So I'll start closing up here. Don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just wanted to kind of see on that note, there's kind of been a bit of a stigma around what's being referred to as indie games nowadays. And I hate that term because of the connotation that a lot of people take it in, as a kind of a branch off from Way Forward, and even Way Forward themselves, a smaller studio compared to something like Ubisoft, who's probably has 300 Assassin's Creed games in progress right now. But what is your thought about the current stigma of there's a lot of indie content out there, as far as Western development goes on 3DS, you don't see a lot of Western studios making anything. It seems to be solely Japan. Same for the PlayStation Vita. You don't have a whole lot of Western studios making content. It's a lot of the independent studios. Do you think there's something as far as, something that you all can do, or as a smaller developer, to help, combat that indie stigma that people seem to have?
Yeah, I think the term indie comes with a lot of weight, a lot of baggage. So yeah, it does come with the negative idea of like, yeah, these are small teams that are like either making iOS games or just above that. Like they're just like trying like small things, but they're just they're kind of crappy experiences. But also it comes with the other side that comes with it is like innovation and exciting, and like trying things out and being more independent minded. And so you get a huge mixed bag because there's so many people making games right now, and so that stigma is something that we're definitely aware of, and we want to make sure that like when we're talking about our game that we're focusing just on like it's not like an indie game, it's sort of just a game, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because yeah, the term can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. The same thing with the term like 8-bit platformer. Like it's that term itself has a lot of baggage, and there's a lot of terms that are out there that you can use to describe Shovel Knight even that we want to just kind of like, I don't know, we don't try to embrace any term or make one less than the others necessarily, but yeah, like the making your own identity has really been a goal for us as a team, making Shovel Knight its own identity.
I think that's the best thing to do. David, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
I think Nick just covered it nicely.
Yeah, excellent. And in dealing with a lot of the independent developers, and you kind of struggle. I struggle to try to avoid the term indie game just because of the connotation some people take it as. But like you said, it's just a game. It's a good game or a bad game,
right,
regardless of whether it's made by 3 people or 300 people. So, I just wish that's something that could kind of break out and branch out. And I think a lot of times the flood of, like you said, some iOS stuff that's garbage, and the Xbox Live indie scene that started up for a while had some great breakout hits, but at the same time it also had a flood of trash that came out.
Anytime you open the floodgates, you're going to get a very mixed bag. I mean, you're going to get a huge amount. You're just going to get a big spectrum of games, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, you're going to see like Braid, but you're also going to see like I don't even know other examples of crappy Xbox Live indie games, but like you know what I mean.
I
like
won't call any names.
Yeah, exactly. Like what's coming when you open the floodgates like that, and
and that goes. I mean, that goes with all games. That goes with AAA games. That goes with AA games. There's always going to be mostly crap and a few good ones.
I'm overall happy that people are able to make games right now. Like it's easier than it's ever been. But
yeah, another thing to keep in mind is that all our favorite games, Castlevania, Mega Man, Mario, Zelda, you name it, right? They were all made by essentially like indie people, like indie-sized teams. They were made by 10 people or less. Like
Yeah.
Exactly.
these enormous properties you think of all started off just as small as any other indie game out there. I mean, so that's so that's something like I mean, that's something to keep in mind that like games used to always be that small. They've only
Maybe,
recently blown up to be huge.
yeah, maybe 20 years in the future, you'll be talking to some other indie guy and say like, so how do you feel about indie games? I mean, it's not like the crap that Yacht Club is putting out, where it's just like they've got 300 Shovel Knight games in the
I was about to say,
works.
I'll come talk to you in about 10, 15 years when, Shovel Knight 20, The Revengeance is out, or when you're getting ready to reboot the series and go back to your roots again. So, um, but yes, thank you all for chatting with me today. I don't want to leave without giving you all a chance to at least have another chance to share anything you'd like to on behalf of Yacht Club Games to fellow handheld gaming lovers, those that maybe think the market's kind of slimming up over the last little bit. But I appreciate what you all have done with Shovel Knight, and I appreciate Nintendo working with you all to come out to allow you to come out on 3DS and Wii U, and for it not to be, it didn't seem like a problem on our end. So if there were any problems in the back end, at least you all got them squared away. So that's good to hear. And hopefully, in the future, the PlayStation Vita Ultimate version may come out too. But is there anything else you'd like to share with handheld gaming lovers out there?
I'll just say thank you so much for supporting us. Like we're so grateful. Like that we wouldn't exist without all the amazing portable people that bought the 3DS version of Shovel Knight, and the people that are listening that like are thinking about buying it. Like you're what makes us even possible. So we're very grateful.
And there's a lot more to come. Like we have a lot of plans to do stuff in the future. So don't think that just because you're not playing it on your device that you're not going to eventually.
Excellent. So, quick last question: favorite character in Shovel Knight?
Oh man. Well,
If you had to pick one to spare, one to save.
Like the one
Put you
that
on the spot. Pick your favorite child, in other words.
second game. Oh god. I don't know. I really like the Tropical King. And
yeah, Tropical King is good. I really like King Knight. I like all the kings a lot.
the guys with crowns.
Yes, anyone with the crown and Shovel Knight is amazing.
Super skeleton. He's got a little ring on.
We're gonna have to get you a crown, David. Let you wear it yourself. I think, unless they have one around the office you wear already.
Yeah, that'd be great. We definitely need to buy some crowns.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of King Knight. Just like the premise of him being a knight, and that's actually, he's not really a king. He's just a king-themed knight. Just like just that makes me laugh. And then his like goofy personality and his like dumb battle, like everything about him makes me laugh. So I love him for that reason. And I feel like he represents a lot of like what the flavor of our game is, which is like this like this stupid tone.
He is definitely a good tone setter.
Excellent. Did I cut you off, Woz? Did you
No.
pick one, or
Oh,
you're gonna go along with? I'm gonna go with the
Tropical King
same.
is mine, but I also like Croaker a lot, the punk guy, and and Toter. Those are good pairing together. Maybe, yeah, I'm gonna say Tropical King is my favorite.
Well, it's good to see such passion, and good to see that you all are enjoying what you're doing. And I'm going to let you all get back to work because I imagine things still haven't ended, despite it being, getting late on a Friday morning for you all, or almost lunchtime for you. So, thank you again. I just wanted to thank Nick Wozniak and David D'Angelo, and David, for joining us today. And as always, enjoy gaming anywhere, anytime. Thanks.
Thank you.